As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
I'm going to tell you in a quick but nuanced take why I agree and disagree with this. So let me start by reading something that I wrote. I don't agree with Trump's position on two genders, and this is from someone very critical of gender theory. Gender is an identity, sex is a biology. If you want to support people, it's really important that we educate them about that difference. In a truly free society, anyone has the privilege of expressing themselves however they want, and in that way, gender is limitless and should remain so. Sex, however, isn't designated by a doctor or a surgeon. It's assigned in your mother's womb by nature. And it's more than just gender and stereotypes and roles. Your sex is largely dictated by your sex hormones and gonads, your ovaries or testes. And these determine your muscles, tissues, bones, skin, and brain. Conflating sex and gender has the potential of teaching young and older people that transition is easy, but it's not. It shouldn't be sensationalized as a trend or even as a subculture. It's a serious long road of dependency on hormones and surgery and the medical system for the rest of your life. And though it brings incredible joy and relief for transsexuals who suffer from sex dysphoria, it's still a pain in the ass. Because you can never fully change your sex, so you're essentially working against your nature for life. Whereas gender is more flippant. What I wear, how I move, my pronouns, this is much easier than trying to change my sex. And this is why I'm very careful in my terminology with non-binary people who lack dysphoria and trans people who are laden with it. Removing your breasts but looking feminine otherwise is different from a transsexual man who needs to live and be seen as a man. The former is elective and even gender nonconforming, while the latter is required and very binary. And then we have intersex people like me, whose hormones and or gonads are mixed. Someone born with a vagina but testes, and someone born with a penis but with ovaries. Or male genitalia like me with female hormones, excess estrogen. This is rare, and it is a natural sex all to its own. And going back to sex importance, it's why kids definitely should explore their gender, their roles, their fashion, how they move through the world, but not interfere with their sex until after development. Because puberty blockers and hormones are not just transitioning your gender, they're transitioning your entire body, your brain, your bones, your blood, your skin, your genetics. Everything is being affected. And it's actually in my advocacy for healthy transitioning that I oppose the notion of children or anyone under 18 undergoing surgical or medical transition. So though I agree with not federally funding children's transitions or even teaching children about transitioning, I oppose the language of two genders and the exclusion of intersex people and sex dysphoric kids from the conversation. Show me you really care about kids by changing the quality of our food, regulating harmful chemicals, and helping kids get off the screen and even better regulate pornography and get these kids back into their body and into nature. Let's not politicize transsexuals who really need this medical care as adults. And let's have plenty of support for kids with dysphoria until they can transition when they're old enough. I have a whole podcast on this. It's called Navigating Dysphoria. You can click on it at the link below. My whole stance on this, the reason I'm talking about this, is we have gotten to this place of Trump and a lot of people saying there were only two genders because we have confused gender with sex so much that actual transsexuals might lose access to very, very important medical treatment, something they need to live and function. And by conflating terms like assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth to people who aren't intersex but are gender nonconforming completely erases the existence of intersex people. I want our government and our healthcare system to recognize sex dysphoric individuals who need medical transition for treatment and intersex kids and adults, because this rhetoric of a trans umbrella across everything starts confusing the general population, and then we get to these places where we want to only recognize two genders. But this is why I'm saying I'm curious about this whole situation and where it will go. So the important piece here is in the language. You're hearing there are only two genders, but I'm hearing there are only two sexes. And besides intersex people, that's true. There are only two sexes. Even intersex people, It's one body that is made up of both the sexes. So there's an ambiguity. It's kind of a third sex characteristic or a third sex identity, if you will. I won't even say identity. It's a third sex. It's a whole sex of its own, but it's still comprised of the two binaries of male and female. This is important terminology for me because this protects transsexuals. This protects their right, their privilege to still be able to legally transition through the proper steps they have to take with their healthcare professionals, with surgeons, with doctors, with psychologists, get their assessments, and be able to submit forms to legally be male or female, which still gives them access to life-changing treatment, to not being misgendered on a license or an ID of some kind or a passport, which can be extremely embarrassing, confusing, and even dangerous in certain situations. If someone knows historically you are the opposite sex you're appearing, you were born the opposite sex, that can be dangerous if it's in the hands of the wrong individual. Pulling somebody over in the middle of the night, let's say on the side of the road, for example. But what's also important is someone who has legally transitioned their sex, not their gender, but their sex, poses no threat to anybody in a bathroom. These are individuals who have been on hormones, have had surgery, who have biologically transformed and are living as men and women and are using a bathroom to use a bathroom. I'm not suggesting, by the way, that someone who's non-binary or someone very early in their transition is doing anything suspicious or wrong in a bathroom. I don't actually believe most of them are. What I do believe is it creates massive confusion for people when someone with a beard walks into a woman's bathroom and we call that a trans woman. That's very different from a trans woman who is trying to pass, who is in the midst of transitioning, still has some male features, and walks into a bathroom to use the bathroom. We need to make these distinctions so nonconformity, so gender fluidity, so non-binary people can still have their party, still express how they want to, still create a subculture, because I believe in fringe and subculture and freedom of expression, and not accidentally step on the rights of transsexuals who are trying their hardest to live and survive in a binary system that they actually agree with and connect to. So what makes this so difficult is when you say you can't change your gender, what that really means is you can't self-ID. So you can't go online and just say, I'm male, if you've done no transitioning and you're a biological female. So this affects people primarily, at least right now, it could change any day. This primarily affects people who are into self-identification, who are gender nonconforming, who are non-binary, but aren't transsexuals. And that's why I like the difference in terminology. Transgenders are not transsexuals. There are people who have never, ever transitioned, have no desire to. People I look up to, like very controversial people like Camille Paglia, who sees herself as transgender, right? Because she doesn't fit in with the gender stereotypes of female. But she doesn't see herself as transsexual because she doesn't want a sex change. She doesn't want to go on hormones. She doesn't want to change her pronouns. There are a lot of people I know who are non-binary to escape the gender stereotype of male or female. But they don't want to change their sex. They like their breasts. They like their penis. They like their body as it is. They just don't want the gender stereotypes. And I'm for that. I'm an androgynous, gender fluid person. I've always been. And I think it's actually very important and helpful and amazing to live that way. At least for me, it is. I'm someone who has benefited largely from top surgery. I developed breasts as a kid, as an intersex kid. I was dominated with estrogen. And so my body was very, very feminine. I had female characteristics. I had a very female brain until late high school. So I identified as a woman, as a little girl, most of my life until my testosterone levels rose naturally. And then I got top surgery, and then I spent a whole 10 years integrating masculinity. So I understand as much as any transsexual how life-saving and life-changing it is to have sex reassignment surgery and to have the proper medical interventions so you can live in the body that feels best to you. But I also understand the need to redefine this gender theory that we've been learning and listening to from activists and academics for a while. Gender theory that's hurting intersex people and transsexuals without even trying to. I don't think this is a sinister thing. I think it's misinformation and confusion. And this kind of stuff happens just naturally when you take something that's meant to be on the fringe, meant to be subculture, meant to be allocated to a small part of the population, television and you try to make it mainstream. You start selling it at Target. You put it on television shows. You bring it to the White House. We've been sold a trans ideology that is not necessarily the transsexual experience. Intersex people have been classified under the trans umbrella, which makes no sense because it has nothing to do with being trans. I'm going to give you an example. And the headline says, Peru classifies transgender, non-binary, and intersex people as mentally ill. Now, intersex people should have nothing to do with that article or that title. Really, no one should. But intersex people have nothing to do with being trans or non-binary. It's not a thought in our mind that is opposite of our body. It's a reaction to an ambiguous body that society doesn't have a lot of modeling for or a lot of support to be inside. And that creates extreme stress. So to classify intersex people as mentally ill because they see trans as mentally ill is what I'm talking about. When you create this umbrella and you don't classify these experiences, it starts to cast a shadow over people that need more advocacy. Intersex has nothing to do with your mentality. It's a biological expression you are born into. It's not chosen. It's not a dysphoria. It usually creates dysphoria, but it's not inherently something that's outside of your nature. It is your nature. I would say transsexualism is very similar. Every transsexual I know, I feel their male spirit even if they're in a female body, or I feel their female spirit even though they're in a male body. There's a very spiritual, ancient code to this, and transsexuals that take that seriously have devoted themselves to honoring the biology that they feel most connected to, the sex they feel most aligned with. They honor that sex class in that group, and they honor their spaces, and they have a certain amount of, let's say, usually have a certain amount of dignity and respect and carefulness as they walk into that class. My friends I know who are non-binary, incredibly brilliant, beautiful human beings that don't assert themselves on anybody. They're living what I would say a true non-binary experience of even mentally not being in the binary. Someone sees them as a woman or a man because that's their biology. They're like, huh, that makes sense. That's my biology. That's not how I identify. And that's a really, truly fluid, non-binary approach to it. What's kind of ruining these classes, in my opinion, is it becoming a trend amongst very young people and a form of activism. So it becomes a movement and it becomes trendy, and then it loses the deep culture of why these things exist, why these names exist, and how we understand them. And then we get to a place where Trump and the White House are saying, we are only going to recognize two genders, and people think that affects transsexuals. So far it doesn't, but it does affect people who self-ID. So this is just something to consider. I don't have a final answer, a final say. Who am I to even have a final answer or a final say? As someone who's been gender dysphoric, sex dysphoric, grew up intersex, has believed I was a woman for a long time, just getting used to being a man, has had top surgery, has benefited greatly from it. I'm just giving you my nuanced opinion and my take and my experience of why we're so confused because we've conflated so many terms together. And if there's anything I could say or hope for, it would be let yourself be what you want to be without appropriating another group. Just say, I'm non-binary and I was born female, instead of I was assigned female at birth. Only intersex people are assigned a sex at birth that isn't true for them. When a doctor says she's a girl, it's because you were born with a vagina. The doctor is properly labeling you and identifying you based on your sex. Now, if that doctor is to say, you were born with a vagina, so you need to do housework, that's someone assigning a gender role to you. So this is why I understand transgenderism. I understand non-binary. I understand gender nonconformity. We have to break out of these really oppressive, tight roles that we've been given that have not led to certain groups' successes, but have been blockades to them. I'm all for that. But let's not do it at the expense of appropriating intersex and transsexual experiences. And let's figure out how we can do that. I don't have the answer, but that's my hope. Let's see where it goes. I would love to know your comments about this below, please. If you're listening to this on my podcast, go over to my YouTube page or go to my website and fill out a contact form. I want to hear how this lands for you, especially if you're non-binary, gender nonconforming, or you identify as trans. What lands that I said? What doesn't? Teach me. I'm totally open. Ooh. That's the end of today's episode. Now let's take a moment to notice where we feel the episode in our bodies. Close your eyes. Take a breath. And let whatever wants to come up, come up. And remember, those sensations hold the wisdom that we're looking for. If you want to go deeper, visit holisticlifenavigation.com. Stress and trauma happen in the body, so we need to go inside the body in order to recover from it. I'm Luis Mojica, somatic therapist, nutritionist, and trauma educator. My 7-week course is going to teach you how to use nutrition, somatics, and embodied parts work in order to recover from stress and trauma. My virtual course is 100% live, taught by me and my team, and it's a lot like a retreat because we're not just teaching you things, we're interacting. We're practicing, we're engaging in sound healings, and we're there for you through one-on-one support throughout the entire 7 weeks. My team is a huge part of this support system to help make sure you are integrating and practicing this work and having all the support you need to get through the 7 weeks. Camille Leek is our community manager and co-teacher. Evan Glenn Adams is our resident sound healer, who will be doing a live sound healing every week. Marika Malaya is there for co-regulation, somatic practices, and support throughout the 7 weeks as well. Week 1 of my course is all about the biology of stress and trauma, meaning what's actually happening inside of you when you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious. Week 2 teaches you trauma-informed nutrition, which essentially means how food affects your adrenals, your blood sugar, and your nervous system, including your brain and your mood.
One of the things that was really profound came in week 2 with the shift in diet, not only in terms of noticing a real shift in my energy levels, but also in my gut health.
Week 3 helps you explore how your body experiences your relationships, the people around you, the places you go to, even where you live. Week 4 is integration week, which is a lovely week to spread out, settle in, and integrate everything you've learned from the prior 3 weeks. I'll host a Q&A session, an integration session, and a sound healing that week.
Being in community with people from all over the world feels incredibly beautiful during these divisive times.
These practices are very simple, and yet they seem to have a really profound effect.
Week 5 is the beginning of how you relate to yourself. How do your thoughts show up in your body? How do you relate to your thoughts and your ideas of yourself? This is a really important piece of embodied parts work, so you can learn how to hold these different parts in you instead of letting them rule you and your decisions.
If we hadn't worked with Luis, we would probably be on the verge of breaking up, or, we wouldn't be living together anymore. Yeah,
this video wouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
Week 6 is all about meaning making. What story do you tell based on experiences you've had? And what does your body expect is going to happen again? Week 7, our final week of the course, is all about activation. It's about your relationship to the big, inconvenient, even uncomfortable sensations that emerge due to life circumstances and past experiences.
Luis's ability to kind of lead students through the work in a safe space, earn trust, and oftentimes kind of reach a resolution on the spot. It's pretty incredible.
I hope you join us because we would love to support you in learning, practicing, and integrating this work into your life.
Getting there, it was just, I could tell something special was about to happen.
There's just something about in-person retreats that just doesn't compare to online space.
Minla is outstandingly beautiful. Why not be there with Luis and his team?
My body knew that something intense was going to happen in the most beautiful way.
It was all about getting what each and every one of us needed and what the community needed.
My biggest takeaway is that I got introduced to myself.
We're just a bunch of misfits trying to find community with one another, and that's where my heart just blasted open because I felt like seen, and yeah, it was beautiful. I loved it.
I have developed a 4-week self-paced course that takes 18 years of my personal and professional experience and puts it into one place where you can easily and quickly learn the foundations of recovering from stress and trauma. How does the food you eat affect your stress levels? How do the relationships in your life create stress or peace? How does the relationship you have with your body allow you to feel happier and more settled? I will cover all this and so much more in this 4-week self-paced course. And the best part, it's self-paced. You don't have to sign up at a certain date or finish it at a certain time. It's yours for life, and it's waiting there for you when you're ready to finish it. Throughout this course, I'll be teaching you philosophies and practices that combine my 3 favorite modalities: somatic experiencing, embodied parts work, and nutrition. For more information on this course, click on the link in my episode details.